we have lots to talk about, but I think maybe the most important thing is when we talk about, we're really here to talk about voicing and giving yourself voice to your documentary. I've talked to people about writing, and I've used some of these as an example. But the first thing I want to talk to you about voicing is, no matter whether you're doing a documentary or anything else, we are broadcasters, we're in radio. Our voices are tools, and they should be exercised. How many of you sing or exercise your voice before you voice anything? Nobody?
I warm up.
Okay, what do you do?
Some breathing and nothing
Some
formal or official, but yeah.
That's good. Anybody else? No?
I'll start talking and just sort of doing a few random takes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I read it a few times through first.
Yeah. Okay, that's important too. I sing every single morning in my car on the way to work, which is why I hate taking taxis when I have to. I sing every single morning, and the reason I do that is this is my tool. And without my voice, I'm on radio, I'm nothing, And I am stunned, and this is not a judgment but on you guys, but I'm stunned at how many people in this business do not work their voices. And you can hear it sometimes. You can hear people at the start of, sometimes when people read newscasts, you can hear who's exercised their voice and who's like groggy. And people have different voices, and every voice is okay. And I think that's one of the things we've learned over time on radio, that you can have different voices. You don't have to have a certain kind of deep voice or a certain kind of whatever voice for radio. But you do have to, you need to preserve your voice, and you need to work with it. And you should look into whatever to exercise your voice. But also in terms of talking, you have to get literally your tongue and your vocal cords around different things. And sometimes the best way to do that is to actually work at that before you start. So I quite literally, in the car every day, even if I'm sick of it, I sing. And I'm sure the people at the red lights think I'm an idiot, but quite frankly, it's not about them. It's about what I sound like on the air. So anyway, that's just my biggest piece of advice for somebody in radio. Exercise your voice. She says, clearing her throat. The other thing that I do, and the other thing that I think is really important, and I tell people when they come in and do talk tapes with us as well, and there's no sort of, there's no rule on who does this best first time round or whatever. Even longtime broadcasters used to reading a newscast or a news story when they come to do a talk tape, which is really to talk to me. I say talk to me. And when you're writing, you got to remember that you're driving information, and you're writing in sentences, and you're writing in proper English and all of that stuff, but you're also talking to me. How many of you listen to Serial? Okay. What did she do? What was so different in her thing? She talked to you, right? She took you through it. And I remember listening to a conversation on one of the programs here where they're saying, and it's so amazing, it's unfolding in real time. No, it's not. It was all scripted. It was just really well voiced, right? And so what you can do with your voice, you can be flippant, you can be serious, you can take it slow, you can take it fast. But what you want to do is be real with it, and you want it to somehow mesh with the clip that you're coming in and out of as well. So you have to take your cues from what you're talking about and how you're going into something and how you're coming out of it. And sometimes that'll mean just, really experimenting with things and listening to how other people do things. And some people have a very formal way of talking, and it works just fine. And I listen to them do a doc, and I think, I wouldn't do that. But quite frankly, I really like them. And it's because they've owned their own material. And that's the other thing. When that mic goes on, you have to own it. And you're going to have to figure that out yourself on how you own it. But one of the ways to own it is to write it yourself, and which is why it was so unusual that I didn't do that with the Neil Harbison doc, which you're going to hear in a minute. And the other way to do it is to keep going over it. So when I'm writing, and you'll also see these scripts are very different in how they're written. When the Sarajevo doc that you see is written with ellipses and partial paragraphs, and then I start at the front of the line again. That's because as I wrote that doc, I was saying it out loud. I write the opening to The Current every day, and arguably I listen back some days and I go, oh, would you just slow down? As you can see, I talk very fast. But I read it over as I go, also today, and then I'll write and I'll fix it and I'll go back. If I trip on something, I go back if it doesn't fit. And I have all these crazy little things that I do. It has to be, it's written in 14 point. It has to be only 1 page long. My bills, those are my restrictions because they can't go too long, and that's what I'm working with 3 clips. And but I go back and forth reading it. To this day, I've always done that when I write scripts. I did it when I worked in television. I did it when I, in radio, as a news reporter, as a documentary writer. I did it with the Fifth Estate. And I let the material tell me what my tone should be. I should also tell you that I have been in this business 30 years, and my voice and my voicing has evolved. So it's something I really believe strongly, that part of voicing is to listen to yourself and to listen to other people. If you hear how they use inflections, and if it grates on you, you go, why? Okay, well then I should try not to do that too. Or if you hear something you like with the way they do it, that, some of the things that Sarah Koenig, it's Koenig, right? Some of the things she did I really liked, even including at one point she knocks on the door of the guy, I forget his name now, the guy who, Jay, yeah, and she goes, it's a really dick thing to do, to go out. And I thought, I wouldn't say it's a dick thing, but I like when she says it. But she changes her tone in there a number of times, and changing your tone is important depending on what you're doing. And sometimes you're really talking to people as you do your doc, and sometimes you're more formal. There's no right or wrong way. That's, if you're working with a producer on that, you can discuss that. But the most important thing is to own it and to try to make it mesh with what you're doing. Now, one of my all-time favorite documentaries that I did for television is The Murdered Bride, which is the story of Jassi Kaur Sidhu, who was killed in India. Her mother and uncle ordered her killing. And it took us, I kid you not, okay, so we were doing a Fifth Estate documentary, which is like 42 minutes by the time you take the commercials out of it, full of clip. So what, maybe 20 minutes of voicing, not even, maybe 15 minutes of actual my voice once you get the sound and the tension track and all that stuff in. 8 hours it took me to record that doc. 8 hours with a producer on the other side of the glass. When I liked it, he didn't. When he liked it, I didn't. And we went back and forth. And the reason I like that doc so much is that you write with the Fifth Estate, you actually write to the picture. So you know what information you're going to put everywhere, but then in order to really, and you have to move that information, but you literally sit there with the video and you go back and forth and write, and what fits, what doesn't fit, and you got 10 seconds here and there. With radio documentaries, I really let sound rule. I have always let sound rule as a news reporter. I always looked for my clip. I always looked for what sound do I start with, what little bites do I, even like 3-second bites in television, I used to write them into the edit script. This is where you find it. This is what I'd like. And I work with people still, like, it's a team effort, obviously, but you have an idea of how you want to use the sound and bring it up and bring it down. So let that also inform how you use your voice. Like the sound of the clips and the sound that you're going to bring in is also part of your voice. So try to bring that together and then try to listen to what you're doing. Am I making any sense? Yeah, okay. Just because everything is the sound, right? And your voice is just another sound. But your voice is also driving information, or you're expressing incredulity, or you're very serious, or maybe you're talking about yourself, maybe you're inserting yourself in the doc, maybe you're not, but somewhere along you are using your voice to take me through the story. And so how you use your voice is meshed with how you've written and structured that documentary. But remember, your voice is another part of the tool, which is why, in the same way we take care of our palate, we take care of our voices. Anyway, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little bit of I'm not going to do a thing, I'm going to ask Carlos to do it. Play a little bit of the Neil Harbison doc. And you've got the script, so just so you can see what we're up to. This is a guy, by the way. If you Google him, he's got what looks like a book light coming out of his head, and it says that in the script, but it's literally this thing that comes out and hangs in front of his forehead, and that picks up the color, and it transmits it into his skull. And I did see him. Gord came to me and said, I want to do a doc on this guy. And he starts describing him, and I said, wait a minute. And I went, oh my God, I saw this guy in New York. I was in New York having brunch, and I thought, what the hell? And, it's just like so interesting. And that is the response, of course, everybody has when they see him for the first time. But so we actually played with that too. But We're ready for you now. So here's the first part.
Nice to meet you. This is Neil.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Fantastic. Well, come with us.
Neil Harbison doesn't know this yet, but I've seen him before.
Did you walk into the Cafe Mogador about 2 weekends ago, the Moroccan cafe?
Probably.
I saw you. And I saw
A couple of weeks before this meeting, I was in New York City, sitting in a cafe with a couple of friends. In a city of 8 million people, passers-by come and go without anyone remarking. But Neil Harbison stands out. And trust me when I say you're going to want to see what he looks like. We've posted pictures of him on our website, cbc.ca/thecurrent. Neil Harbison is a cyborg. That's what he calls himself. The giveaway and what attracts all the attention is the tiny camera dangling in front of his face. It hangs from a flexible metal antenna that looks sort of like a little booklight. And what I failed to notice on that first chance encounter is that the antenna is wired into a hard metal chip that's fused into the base of his skull.
Yeah, it's basically an antenna that comes out from the back of my head. It's been drilled inside my bone, so it was osseointegrated. So the antenna goes inside the skull, and then it took like 2 months for the antenna and the bone to unite when it fixes permanently in the skull.
So this is no mere whim. As part of our series By Design, I wanted to get to know a man who thinks the future of humanity lies in taking control of our own design, using technology to enhance ourselves. Neil Harbison had that antenna surgically implanted in his bones so he could experience color. He was born with achromatopsia, a condition that affects about 1 in every 33,000 people and leaves them unable to see colors. So Neil Harbison's camera records the colors and translates them into sounds. Each color has a distinct tone, one that resonates differently through his skeleton, so he can experience colors by hearing them. So when he looks at grass, he hears a note somewhere in the range
Between G sharp and A, and sometimes a bit B flat, but it's usually A, basically.
And when he looks at a bright blue sky, he hears
C sharp. So the sky is C sharp when it's a clear day.
Neil Harbison calls the camera his eyeborg, and the mechanics of how it works are actually quite simple.
So it's transposing light frequencies to sound frequencies. So color is a light frequency, and each color has a different light frequency. So the chip is...
Okay, so I purposely speeded up, slowed down in that script. I'm trying to explain, when I saw Neil Harbison and then I started talking to people about him and knew I was going to meet him, I did the same thing to everybody. You will not believe this guy I met. You got to see this guy. He's got this thing hanging in front of his face, and this is what it does. And so I wanted to talk like that to an audience for the documentary. I wanted to make it like, you won't believe this guy. This is what he's doing. And so that's what you're hearing, because that's how I believe we would talk. So I go, what I failed to notice on that first encounter. So to become so familiar with the script that you can talk to me, right? So this is, you might know that I'm reading it, but I'm trying to take you through and tell you a story about him, right? And so that's the kind of voice you hear in that one. And it's kind of curious and interesting. It's not like the next doc where I'm talking to 2 women who've been raped and, in the war in Sarajevo and carried their pregnancies to term. This is about a guy who calls himself a cyborg, and he's changing the way we think about how we use technology on our own bodies. So it's a completely different thing, right? And it needs a different tone. And that doesn't mean that you change tones. Again, you're only getting my opinion here, so feel free to accept or reject, because, again, you have to own your own stuff. But I don't like it when I hear myself or anybody else being maudlin because I think I'm supposed to be, like 2 children are dead today. That kind of thing where it's put on. That's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about sort of being in sync with what you're talking about. So do you have any questions? And by the way, if you have questions, just interrupt me. Because otherwise I'll just not stop
So how would
talking.
you voice something like 2 children are dead today? I mean, is that completely dictated by the audio?
Sometimes, yeah, and by the script, yeah. And
You're going to hear it in the next one that we're talking about something different. But I think what I'm suggesting is you don't do it like you don't have to force it. If it is emotional for you, I've actually had like read stuff on this show and intros that really like are moving, and I feel myself choking up. So, and then I try to hide it, and it doesn't always work. So sometimes it's like it's a really natural emotion in your voice, but you don't have to push it. Like you can just be yourself. But if you feel really strongly about it, and that's where your writing comes in and you're voicing your own writing. So it's your choice of words. It's the way you mix the sound with what you're talking about, right? For maximum effect, right? Any questions about Neil Harbison and how we did the beginning of this? Any thoughts? No?
Is it difficult for you to come off as that conversational? What would you find more challenging to come off as that capturing that genuine emotion, or that's kind of peppy and upbeat and conversational versus what we're about to hear next?
It depends on, again, it just depends on what you're doing. I think it would be really hard to be that tone with this, but it's the writing as well, right? And so, Gord spent a lot of time with the sound. We had real restrictions on our work with Neil Harbison because he was shooting a film with somebody, a documentary film, and he had restrictions on, he couldn't go into the field with us. So we had to do a studio doc. So he literally came in here and we did an interview. But we knew, for example, that when he goes into a grocery store, he says it's like, and we have that in the script later, it's like going to a rock concert for him because especially the household cleaning aisle has so much color. It's just all this sound. And so Gord played with that kind of thing. And, he had to learn something like 400 different sounds to be able to identify them as colors. And so Gord played, it really is a sound doc. And so Gord was playing with that while I was off in the summer. And we talked about it. And then when I came back, he had done this and I was, by rights going to play with it. And I looked at it and you see, I changed a few words, here and there, but I mean, it just really worked for me. Gord is a producer on our show for a while. He was the writer on our show as well. So he knows my voice. But it's not what's hard and what's not hard. I think it's really hard to have the wrong tone for the wrong stuff, in my mind. But that, again, has to be, I think when you hear something that grates, that doesn't sound right, it's because the person who's doing it hasn't really made it mesh and hasn't really owned it, because there's no right or wrong way, but there are ways that grate, or make you lose out on the nuance because of either the read or the way you're doing it. And of course, what you're trying to do is bring out the story as best you can, right? So, again, I don't think there are any hard and fast rules on this kind of thing. I think you have to find it. Do you have a question?
Oh yeah, sorry, just until you finish. Yeah, I was I'm just noticing the way you voiced some of it, that it, like, there's some pretty long sentences in there, and you don't lose, I find, like, with a really long sentence like the last one, and I failed to notice on the first encounters that the antenna is wired. Like, it's a really long sentence, but you keep it going the whole time. Do you have tips about how to sort of keep that momentum going, or that
It's
rhythm?
called a red pen. It's called a Sharpie. I do. I mark up everything. In fact, when a guest host comes on The Current, I give them a red Sharpie. Welcome to The Current. But I do it on this stuff too, which is why I didn't break this up, but I broke it up. It's funny because I was just hunting for my red pen. I stopped using a Sharpie for some scripts because I realized I was going to die of Sharpie fumes. But I left television because I was going to die of hairspray lung, and now I'm going to die of Sharpie fumes. But so I mark stuff up, and so I'm reading it out loud, and I see where I might have a problem, and so I might put a slash there. I might put a little. I might actually like do this with a word to make sure that I say them all together. I do this with my scripts all the time, every day. My intros, I might put little dots between the words because I know the words have to run together in a phrase. So I'm constantly marking my scripts. To read from a sea of black and white that's when you will start reading, because your eye can't handle everything, and your voice or maybe yours can, but mine can't, right? Like I start thinking, oh, what about this? What about that? And then I lose my train of thought, and then I trip.
Whenever I trip on the current, even reading a script, like even reading an introduction, it's because I see a word and then I'm thinking, did I say that word right? Was that the right word? But I'm still reading, right? But I'm still back there and I've lost it. And if you mark it up with red, then you no longer have a sea of black and white. And it kind of, you can remember, oh, I need to string this together, or this turn of phrase or whatever. Or I might actually change a turn of phrase that's written for me in a script. Or I might write a turn of phrase in a script that I wrote, but as I'm reading it, and I think I can do it, but then as I go into the studio to voice it, I realize I'm just going to, I keep mangling it, so I change it again. I mean, if if the rule for me is if I mangle it like 3 times in a row, time to change the phrase, And there are some words that I'll just trip over. So I'll literally put lines in like a long word. Just like little things like that because it has to keep going. What's that word I used? What was that thing that he suffers from? Achromatopsia. Okay, I worked on that one, right? But that's what you do, right? If you have something, you've got to, achromatopsia. So I would have actually broken it up. I would have figured it out and broken it up. Like if you have a warning, and if it's your own script, you do have a warning. But if there are things you're going to trip on, use a red pen. And, I buy them, and I literally buy boxes of red pens. I mark up all my scripts at night. I mark up my cue lines. They're written in like big script here. I mark them up in little script at home. And I'm all about marking stuff like that up, and it just, your eye can follow it easier. So that's my one trick. Now, the Sarajevo doc is very different. This is, we'll hear a little bit. And it's a very different sound. It's a very different story. It's about, we wanted to know what happened 20 years after the war in Sarajevo. A lot of women were gang raped. There were rape camps. These 2 women had been raped, become pregnant, and they kept the kids, which was very unusual. And we had them tell their stories. And anyway, you'll hear what we did with it. We've got a little bit of it here, and give you an idea. We can talk then about the differences in the 2.
We had always been neighbors. Then they came for us one day. We were in a stone house, hiding in the basement.
Safada is a big, methodical woman. Even before she begins to speak, she has brought us coffee. She's opened the window for the cigarette smoke. She settles into a chair on the 3rd floor of a home for abused women in Tuzla, in northeast Bosnia. She cleans here. What else would I do, she asks. And she begins.
The morning of May 25, a truck came, a yellow FAP truck, and some other vehicles. They started collecting people. People who could not climb on the trucks were shot on the spot. They took us to a house, they packed us into the house, and they continued collecting people from the area. In the end, they were around 450 people, including children and women. That's where real abuse began, and rapes.
She holds her cigarette, her big hands, on her belly, leaning back slowly in her chair, then moving forward, lost in thought.
They took me out on the 2nd night, me and another woman, Fata. They took us to Hassan's house. There were other girls there. They took me to a room. Inside there was a couch, and it was stained with blood. I also saw blood-stained women's underwear. I knew what was going to happen to me. The men ordered me to sit on the couch between them. He then ordered me to undress. He pinched my breasts. Pacha started biting me and tearing at my panties. In the end, he raped me.
It was the spring of 1992. Safada was 29. After that, she'd hide. For 9 days, she hid under a sink whenever the Serb soldiers came looking for women. Safada wipes her eyes and tries not to cry. Much later, that same year, in another part of central Bosnia, in a region called Zavidovići, Jasmina was 21.
Imala sam lijep život, onaj normalan, išla sam u školu, završila, roditelji su, otac je jako.
I had a beautiful life, a normal life. I went to school and I lived like everybody else. It was a really normal life. I had dreams for the future. More than anything, I wanted to go to the university and I wanted a car. I always wanted a driver's license. I wanted to earn a salary because my dad always supported us with his meager salary. But I had no chance to give him my first paycheck because he died before I could do it.
When did the war come to your village?
First, there was a war between Serbs and the Muslims, and we were not affected that much because no Serbs were living near us. But then the war with Croats began, and our village began to split in two. The railway tracks separated us. We were on one side and Croats were on the other.
Jasmina is not her real name. It's the one she's asked us to use. She's a smoker. She's got half a pack of Sarajevo Drina cigarettes next to her. And by the time we finish this conversation, she will have finished that one and started in on another. She peels the tiny barcode tag off her lighter, passing it back and forth between her fingers. And as she speaks, in a language I don't understand, her voice becomes more urgent. Her fingers become so frenzied that I'm uncomfortable. I know she's about to break.
I was raped by 5 Croats. I don't know even whose child she is.
And all the air goes out of the room. If you go to the second page there where I talk about Jasmina is not her real name, it's the one she asked us to use. And then I stop and I go, she's a smoker. And I just kind of say that off the cuff, right? Because that's not really what we're talking about, but I'm trying to get you to picture her. And I'm trying to get you to picture her in ways that it's not like she has, she's not long brown hair and eyes that smile, that kind of thing. People always use those descriptions. I'm not crazy about them. But okay, she's a smoker. She's got half a pack of Drina cigarettes. And I name the cigarettes. It's just little things, right? But it's a throwaway line. But I want you, so I change the way I'm talking. Right? And I take, again, my cues from her. So I talk about how she's peeling that barcode. This was a really seminal moment for me in that room with her. I was sitting there watching her. First of all, it took us months to get close to these women, to actually get, and working from here. Laura O'Brien was the producer on this, and we were working with a woman in Sarajevo. It took us forever to get, and then we found 2 women. We thought we could only get 1, and we found 2. But so we finally meet her, right? She's agreed to talk to us, and she's met us at a shelter that actually existed when I was working Bosnia 20 years earlier. And, it's a big deal. She's going to come and tell us this story. Her daughter knows the story now. The first one, her son does not know the story. But she's going to share this really personal stuff. And so I'm watching her because she's not sure of us, right? But she seems pretty open and she's talking. And then she starts playing with this barcode. And it's like literally my reaction is what I wrote there. I'm thinking, oh my God, because the fingers just keep going faster, faster. So I'm trying to give you a sense of that, right? And then she just breaks down. And I can see it coming and I'm thinking, oh my God, and all I can do is sit there. There's nothing I can do. I just have to let her talk to me. And so all of that I was watching, all of that I was feeling here, I took that back with me and I wrote it. And that's the important thing you have to, that I would like you to remember. I say have to, you don't have to do anything. But that's the important thing that I would like you to remember in a documentary. You're firing on so many cylinders, you're absorbing all of this stuff and you're gonna write it in. You're gonna either work it in the sound or you're gonna work it in the way that you write it, and then you're gonna work it in how you do the narrative and how you use your voice. And so when I go, and all of the air goes out of the room, that's what it felt like. right? And that line to me is really important. The sigh that you hear in there, all of that stuff, that line really mattered to me because that's what it felt. And it's a very, I know from the people who have heard it, that that's a pretty powerful line because it really, it takes you there, right? And the thing about, we hear documentaries in our heads. There's nothing for us to see except what our imaginations give us, but that's where the sound and the voice really, and if I had voiced that in a different way, I don't think it would have the same power. So that's what you're playing with your voice. And when you realize that your voice is as powerful as the tape you collect, that's when they mesh. And that's the kind of thing that I want you to think about as you write your doc and voice your doc. And, you might start the voicing and then you might revoice. You might say, okay, well, I'm too flippant here or I'm too serious there. Maybe I need to have a little more fun with it. But you're always listening. You're firing on all those cylinders because it's as important as anything else. And, sometimes people spend so much time in the field and then they come in, they turn on the mic and they just throw it away. It's as important as everything else you do. And that's what so in this kind of thing, and then you change a little bit each time. So, and that's where the ellipsis coming out. It was the spring of 1992. Safta was 29. After that, she'd hide. I'm telling you a story, right? And again, it's if you get stuck, think about how you would tell your best friend, you'll never believe this person I met today. Oh, and she told me this is what happened. And then she'd hide. If that's how you talk to a friend, right? So use that if you get stuck. Think about how would I tell somebody if I'm not writing the script? How would I do that? And then how do I transfer that? I have a friend who used to train people to write stuff, and she'd make them stand up to say, okay, put your hands up, then put one hand here, now sit down and talk to me. Because that's what you want to do, right? You're writing it, and the words are important, but the talking is important too. And sometimes that means some of the best phrases, and I'm a writer, I really believe in the writing. I don't wing stuff. I have scripts. I was a field reporter for most of my career. I've been the host of The Current for 13 years, so I should be careful now. But I still work in the field in The Current, and it really matters to me that I write well. That I take pride in my writing, and everybody needs an editor, and I always have editors too. But sometimes I write a phrase that I really love, and then I have to kill it because it doesn't work. And and there's no sense keeping it if it just works in my head. I once worked with a producer who said, okay, you want to be a poet or are you going to write a documentary? Get rid of all that crap. So when it doesn't work, sometimes the poetry comes through, but sometimes the poetry can be in the simplicity. But the trick is that it has to all fit together. It's like making a piece of a beautiful textile, right? With all the different threads in it. But if you're making a pattern, sometimes you have to pull at one of the little threads and get rid of that little part of the pattern so that the rest of the pattern looks good. But that's why I would like you to think about using your voice that way. Use your voice as part of the whole thing. Yeah.
And that was a really wonderful translator, too, just because I feel like it was parallel with...
Well, and in fact, the second one is an actress. The first one is the woman we were dealing with who just happened to have the same kind of calm, matter-of-fact voice as that one. So we got all the translation from her first.
Just with the size, and
yeah,
often you don't hear that.
Yeah, and then you bring the size up and down. But for Yasmina, she was so emotional that we actually had a woman who actually, she's an actress and she's a director, and she'd made a film about this kind of thing, and she was the best friend of the woman who was translating for us, so it was easy to find her. But it makes a real difference as well to have somebody who knows how to voice in translation, right?
My question is, I guess it's sort of like that gut reaction, but if you have any tips for when to let tape speak for itself, because sometimes there's you have that great last line, and do you add that line of narration after it, or in terms of pregnant pauses, or how you when you decide just to let the tape speak for itself, and maybe
as often as you can. What you mean, the size that I left in there, or the...
No, I guess, well, in terms of the last she sort of breaks down. I forget what her Yasmina's last line is, but I don't know, then they raped me or something, and then you have the final line, and then all the air left the room, and I feel like that really works because it pushes the story forward. But often you have a really powerful line from your person you're interviewing. When do you just leave that as the last line? When do you...
When you feel you should. If you're less is more. I really believe that less is more. So If it is powerful on its own, and if you're just being redundant, pull it out. If you can bring it further along, like I really wanted to underline that this was the moment, right? It just all right then and there. You know, she's playing with the stuff, she spits it out, and it's like the room, everything changes. But you'll see that I use huge chunks of clip in this, and all the way through we have pauses. So I have a fair bit of script because I also am doing, like, this is historical, right? It's 20 years old. I've got to put it in context. But as much as you can, let them, if you've got it, let them tell it, right? And that's part of the way that you write around it too, right? It really does mesh. Like, you can talk about writing as a separate thing and voicing as a separate thing, but that's when you go to voice, that's when you do your final fine-tuning on the writing too, because you see how it meshes. But if your gut is to let them have the final word because it's powerful or it's subtle and the nuance is there, go ahead. Don't be afraid to do that.
I was going to ask you just on the first page, there was where you voiced something she asked, and I wondered if it's because the clip where you say, "What else would I do?" she asks. Is it because that would be so short to interject one line? Like, I always try to decide between where is it easier for me to speak and not have a clip come in that's only 2 words or something, because that can be quite disruptive if it's not a full expression. Mm-hmm. So I wondered in that instance, you said what she said,
Yeah, I'm trying to think for a reason here. I really struggled with how to describe her without and sort of what she did. And chances are, yeah, I wanted just to use that to characterize, because as you can imagine, we had something like a 2-hour conversation, right? And then we ended up going to her house, meeting the kid, her son, and she goes, "Don't tell him what you know." And I go, "Well, isn't it going to be on the internet?" No, not really. So it was okay. So, we spent a lot of time with her. We had a lot of tape, so stuff is going to go. And so at some point we figure out, what we need translated. And we actually, we did all our voicing over there too. So Laura was really good at this. We would finish, Yasmina, who was the name of the woman we were working with, and we gave that name to the second woman, would stay up late and translate, like again, go through her translations and give us everything. And then Laura would chunk out stuff that she wanted voiced, and we would discuss it together. But then we were working structure as we went because we didn't have a lot of time. But so some of that is just because I have extra information, right? I'm taking notes, and it doesn't really fit as a clip, but it fits as a characterization. Well, what else would I do, right? So there's sort of what I was trying to think I characterized. What I was trying to do there was kind of show that she's really got nothing else to do,
How often do you take notes when you're...
Always.
Okay.
Always.
How do you do both with the mic and what's your
This strategy? Is where it helps to be the host of The Current. You work with someone. But I always took notes, even when I was in the field reporting. You either scribble a little bit. I always watched time code, like when I was doing clip. I'm always tuned to what am I going to do with what they're telling me right now, because I have a deadline real fast. I've worked to so many tight deadlines. I just fire like that, right? I just work like that. But I take notes as I drive up. I make little notes, or I make little notes right after. I'm just always making little notes. And it's those little tiny things, like little observations, that you can use later. Like, what does she look like? So I might write a couple of lines, and there's just something about the way that she sat with her hands on her stomach. But as soon as I tell you that, where is it? Her large hands are on her belly. You have a picture of her. You kind of start to see. I already say she's big and methodical. She kind of moves slowly, and so you don't really know what she looks like, but you kind of have a physical sense of her presence. And so I'm writing those little things down. 3/4 of them I will never use. Right? But I'm just always making notes. I just notice little things.
Yeah. I guess I also wonder, because for my story, I'm having to describe a scene of a guy in a room, and there's so many details, and I don't know how many details is too many details to write into it, and when is it overload, and when is it not enough, like I want to paint a
What's
good
in
enough
that
picture.
room?
Well, he's a hoarder. So he's got papers everywhere and bills everywhere. He's got 3 computers. He's got speakers everywhere. He's got boxes like from deliveries that he gets every day. He's about 90 pounds. He's got chains around his neck. I don't know, but there's so many.
Did you take a picture of that room?
I did, yeah.
Okay, that's a
So
great
look
idea.
back.
The way I would suggest, because I'm already getting a picture, that's so fascinating. But one of the ways you get through, he's a hoarder, he's got all this stuff. So look around as you're in the room, say, I would be making notes, and I would take notes on almost some banal stuff too. There's a newspaper there, 1952. Oh, seriously, 1950? You know what I mean? What's the date on that newspaper? I'm all about trivia, and sometimes it works, right? I remember being in Nicaragua after Hurricane Mitch, and there was this landslide that came down and literally just took stuff away. And I was there with Carmen Merrifield, who's fluent in Spanish, and we were going to go talk to this group of guys standing on the edge of this thing, and they had just they'd come back. They were guest workers somewhere else, and they came back. Everything's gone. And so there's stuff around, and then there's a couple of bowls, but in the stuff, in the mud, was a kid's school book. And I opened it up, and it had her name. And I think it was Gloria Nunez. I still remember the name because I said the name on the air. I didn't actually show the name in the book. I showed the book because it was TV. But sometimes it's the detail that will take you there. So you've got 2 things going on, and you can use both of them. One is just the overwhelming, you're kind of assaulted by all of these things, so however you describe that. But then if you go in and you say that there's this little thing and that little thing, then suddenly it registers, because who does that? Who keeps, again, say it's a newspaper from there. Who does that, right? Or some crazy little thing he has in the corner that is clearly only, that it's been there for a long time or something, or that's towering to the ceiling. But 1 or 2 little things in the midst of that description will take us right in. There's a principle in literature that you get through to the general and the universal, through the concrete and the particular. And it's what you do it's what every movie does. It's what every really good television doc will do. They give you the wides, but they also give you the close-ups. And they go really close sometimes, and that's what you want to do as well with your documentary. You want to do it with your sound or your voice or a combination, but you want to give me the big picture, but you also want to give me the little stuff, because the little stuff informs the bigger stuff. Does that make sense? So I'm guessing that in the midst of all that stuff you saw in his room, if you're already starting to think, oh yeah, there was this and that if you make mention of a few particulars along with the other things, I will suddenly be in that room with you. I think that really, again, you have to find your own voice and listen to how you do things, and then don't be afraid to change how you do things as you go along. So how you do this documentary and voice it will not be how you do the next one and voice it. You're going to keep growing with all of this stuff. So maybe you're going to love 15 things that you did with that, and 15 things you're going to take forward to the next doc, but 2 of them you're going to go, I'm not going to do that again. And you're going to leave them behind. But play with it. Don't be afraid to play with it and experiment with it. There are no rights and wrongs. And CBC radio was always good at that. I started in private radio where people did have certain kind of deep voices at one time only, right? CBC has a mix of voices, and if you look at who you really listen to, ask yourself why you're really listening to them. What is it about somebody's voice that catches you? And it's usually because it comes through as true. It comes through as that they're owning it and they're talking to you. Or even if they're sort of reading you a story, they're still they're in the zone with you, right? So really concentrate. When you're voicing, you're there. And that's why the marking up of the script helps too. And if you don't feel like you're there, do it again. So I rarely pick up a line. I'll start right back up again. Not the whole thing necessarily, but if I trip here, I don't just pick up that line, I pick up the whole thing, because I want it to have the rhythm, right? And I'm trying to feel the rhythm. But it's all part of the same thing. So if that helps you, and then just the clip, like if I revoice stuff, sometimes I'll say, well, you have to play the clip for me again, because going in or out of the clip really matters, that they set the tone. And we've all heard it. We've all heard somebody come out of something where, where somebody's traumatized, and the tone of the person coming out with the narrative just is off because it's just not in sync. And again, it doesn't have to be fake, but it has to be sort of respectful. It has to be sort of in line with that kind of thing, right? I mean, you can think about it in like sort of skits on newscasts, right? In other news, this just in, 15 people are dead. Meanwhile, footballs are on sale. Like, don't do that, right? Like, so don't do that in your doc, right? Like, don't, and then just watch your inflections, like people, if you're talking about something, keep talking about it. And just think about how you said one thing and how it fits in with what else you're saying. Just when you get stuck, think about, how would I say it to somebody? Like, in a nutshell, you'll never believe what I just saw. This is what I saw. And that's how you also pick what's in that room, right? But what are the first 5 things when you got out of that room and you said, you would not believe this place. I couldn't believe it. I saw this, I saw that, I saw that. Right away, you start editing in your head. So trust yourself.